So I guess can anybody check on the stream for me? See if you can see it.
It looks good.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to the Wednesday edition of the Foolish Tech Show. Michael here with the
Let's
usual.
wait and see if anybody else is having any issues.
Okay. Um, so we're here to support our software and services. If so, hey, futures. We're
Hey, Ian.
Everyone's joining our chat, our IRC chat, which I recommend everyone do who wants to participate in our show. You can get us at foolishit.com/live or foolishtechshow.com. It's really easy to get the video and the live chat going with that, and we'd love to talk with you. We primarily would like to discuss any issues our customers have or any communication they want to do regarding our software and services, but if not, we're going to talk about some various other things that interest us, like tech news and security and SBCs, and you know the drill, guys. Everyone else out there who's heard us before kind of knows what we discuss, just general tech news. How is everyone today on this kind of weird Wednesday? I don't know. It's kind of snuck up on me middle of the week.
Not too bad. And Wednesday has a habit of being in the middle of the week.
Yeah, yeah. Strange how that falls. Um, so there's some chat in the IRC here. Let's see who we got. So a couple
We missed
from.
you guys too. Sorry you guys couldn't make it.
Oh yeah, yeah, Quark. We missed you as well, but um, at least we got Shri and Nelson and Eric. So that was all. That was awesome. But I'm sure we'll catch the rest of you guys at some point in time. If not, maybe on our way through Jersey, we'll pay you a visit. So we got some news things to talk about. There was one
If
by.
if we ever go to New Jersey, Michael's driving by himself though.
Yeah, that actually may be a drive that I could make on my own, we'll see. I'm not good in long car drives. Let's see. Phoenix has pointed out a couple of security-related topics that I thought was a little bit interesting. Let me see if I can find it. Um, so specifically, he was talking about a attack similar to what we've discussed previously with the USB Armory or the Land Turtle by Hack5. Basically, this is a type of attack where you plug a device, in this case a Raspberry Pi Zero, into a PC. And at that point, it presents itself as a network adapter. Because of network prioritization, it's able to then get the computer to communicate with it, and it acts as a man in the middle at that point. Um, this can even happen if the computer is password protected and locked effectively. But as long the only thing it has to have basically for this attack to take place is a web browser that's opened on the computer. Even a single tab would be sufficient. So I'm going to post that again. Interesting. So this is done on a Pi Zero, so that's a very popular device, very small, and it's inexpensive. It's $5, I believe, maybe a little bit more, depending upon where you buy it from. Uh, that means the cost to enable this is even lower than the other previous devices we discussed, although those devices tend to have a lot more power at their disposal. Um, Just something to be aware of. This is really just a variation on the stuff we previously talked about, but it does steal credentials and does some other things desirable probably by a hacker, by a black hat, and somebody would try to, harm you. So the other payloads were just sort of demonstrations of what can be done, and this is kind of like the full deal. So be aware of that, and don't plug anything into your computer that you don't know what it is. That Pi Zero can be hidden away in just about any convenient casing, so it could externally appear as virtually any type of USB device. They just want to entice you to plug it in, like is so common with human nature these days. But that definitely puts you at risk. So be careful on that one. Let's see. Yeah, Phoenix is a little bit different, but the mechanism by which it gets the computer to communicate with it, via identified itself as a network adapter, and the bypass of the lock screen or password protection on the computer. Those are all virtually. I know the specific code might be different behind it, but the type of attack is the same. This payload that this is using with the cookies and the plain text passwords and the website communication and all that is just kind of on top of it, where it's inserting a backdoor on your system and making those things happen. So let's see. Hackers looking to release professional athletes' medical data. That's interesting. I never really considered that as an attack piece, but yeah, I guess your what would it? Extortion. I mean, that could the type of information, anybody's medical information could potentially compromise somebody's career potentially, but certainly a professional athlete is more vulnerable to that type of thing because their line of work requires a certain level of physical prowess, unlike some other jobs. So that's interesting to consider. I'm gonna switch over to some other things. Let's see here. So where am I? Apparently Google's getting aboard .NET, which might not have seen coming. Well, that's good. I don't know if that's a plus for .NET, or is it a plus for Google, is it a plus for the rest of the world, all of us? It's good to see big players on board with something though. Let's see, and in further surprising news, I know where are has the temperature in hell gotten towards freezing yet? I'm not sure, but Microsoft joining the Linux Foundation. So Google joins .NET and Microsoft joins Linux. Huh, crazy. I know. I never thought I'd report those two news stories in a single day back to back, but there it is. Oh yeah, so Sci-Fi's going to do a remake of Stranger in a Strange Land. If you haven't heard that story, that's an interesting book. I need to read it. I haven't read the book yet, but I've seen a lot of stuff based upon it. I've heard a lot about it. Not what does that qualify me for? Nothing except to have an opinion. But what I wasn't completely sure of, and one of the movies that I've been a fan of, is The Man Who Fell to Earth, starring David Bowie in the early 70s, I believe. Mid 70s, I should say. I think 1976 to be specific, but I'll give you a link to that as well. Is it the? Yeah, it's The Man Who Fell to Earth. This is based, at least loosely, upon that book by Heinlein. Heinlein did Stranger in a Strange Land. And this is a really odd movie. Yeah, that's all I can say. it's non-conventional in many senses. But if you want to see Bowie at what could be a very strong point in his acting career, I'd recommend it. There's a interesting cast. Buck Henry's in it, Rip Torn, Bernie Cassie, a lot of faces you'd probably uh, recommend. I don't think it was a hit in the box office by any means, but uh, this was, I think, in the Ziggy Stardust days for Bowie. Um, but that was cool, and I think the Stranger in Strangeland, if sci-fi does it right, could be well. Now, this apparently it was originally criticized for its depictions of religion and sex, which also has a component in The Man Who Fell to Earth. Um, but Heinlein convinced them to leave that stuff in, and apparently it's got a large fan following as well. And more specifically, tech news. I'm super excited about this, particularly the price. Um, let's see. Okay, so basically, Samsung released a 960 Pro recently, but it's incredible performance, at the top of the line, pretty much that you can get these days in an NVMe SSD. However, its cost was quite a bit high. I can't remember exactly what the cost was, but it's well more than what you would pay for a conventional SSD. These 960 EVOs is where I'm a previous 850 EVO owner. But the 950 EVOs basically do the same thing that the 850 EVO did, bring TLC 3-bit per cell storage, so higher capacities and lower costs with slightly lower endurance, though hopefully offset by better algorithms for garbage maintenance or garbage management and collection and trimming and all that. But they finally got the cost down to right around 50 cents a gigabyte. And I know it's about 30 cents a gigabyte or cheaper, even for conventional SSDs, non-NVMe SSDs, but it has yet to pass for NVMEs to reach that low price point. And I imagine that'll just continue to drop as time goes on, like anything else. So I'm hoping to be able to get in the not so distant future another $300 terabyte NVMe SSD. Basically, no difference in size than what I currently have, but certainly way more performance. I think it should be an option for anyone building a new system. Still a little, I might, wait after the initial release for the prices to come down a little bit after the holiday season, I imagine. But it's definitely a good choice there, and it's got most of the performance of the Pro at, basically a fraction of the price. So that's why I got the 850 EVO and still to this day recommend it for certain applications. And that's why I'll probably replace my existing one with a 960 EVO when that time comes. That Samsung's Polaris controller that they have on those SSDs, the 960 SSDs, it's been, this is the third, or is it the second or third iteration of it? And it's still posting extremely high numbers. So it's a very good controller. Probably will have the lead for quite some time. At least that was the case for the previous generation. So that's fun. Let's see. Phoenix shared with us a website that says has a lot of tech open source programs in it. That's good to know if you want to have a completely open source experience with your software and are wondering about alternatives to things. That's quite an extensive list of open source developers of applications and open source applications themselves. Neat. You'll see some pretty big names in here, just showing you how far open source has penetrated the commercial world. I don't know if it's on this list, but I have a family member employed by a big bank in this country, and he's told me they've open sourced a tremendous number of things. So they probably deserve to be on this list if they're not already. But thank you for sharing that. Well, where on that page does it say what I'm looking at? Phoenix, because well, he says he's looked into it. Yeah, the only thing is I don't it's not exactly explaining what I'm looking at. Oh, and that's weird. See, it's kind of weird. I click on Qualcomm, and it takes me to Thunderbird, and I thought this would be Eudora, but well, just yeah, just be careful where this is redirecting you to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but it may not. If you were intending to go to Qualcomm site by clicking on Qualcomm, that's not going to happen necessarily, at least. Okay, well, thank you for that resource. It's I got to look through it. There's too much here to digest right now, and just randomly clicking on things doesn't seem to be the best thing to necessarily do there. But thanks. Let's see. Was there anything else that you had just put up? Let's see. Okay. Yeah, please make me aware if the chat disappears or anything like that from the stream. I'm kind of juggling several things here today. I want to make sure I don't mess anything up. Where was my? Oh, here I go. Too many windows open. So I've been a big follower of gene editing tools and genetic modification, and I was, there's been so much activity like that in the animal and flora and fauna worlds. I wanted to see if they would apply some of these things to humans, and it looks like the same CRISPR technology that was previously used to do some of this work on very precise gene editing appears to have been used in China in humans. They're basically, in this particular case, they're doing cancer, modifying the immune system to more effectively combat cancer. These types of things could lead to curing cancer effectively, and I think it's going to be great. And the CRISPR, the specific technology behind that is relatively new, but I'm glad to see it was adopted and is in widespread use now, even despite it being relatively new. They're calling it maybe possibly the quote-unquote Sputnik 2.0 of biomedical research, and it looks like it's going to be, and that was with the space race, basically alluding to the space race between Russia and the U.S. during the Cold War, and specifically, leading up to the moon landing by us, by our country. It looks like China has won the first round of this, though, and just as very much like Russia did with Sputnik. So we'll see how the U.S. Comes back and counteracts this, but I hope the research and the work will not stay inside any particular country's borders. I hope it'll benefit everyone, and I hope our pharmaceutical companies can start to open their eyes to potential cures to illnesses instead of daily lifelong treatments, which I know is great for their pocketbooks, but isn't necessarily the best way when you treat every disease as chronic when it's clearly or doesn't have to always be the case. There's I don't watch it, but the Big Bang Theory, it's a popular show. I'm told that one of the main characters' girlfriends works at a big pharma company, and she's cracking jokes left and right about them apparently making diseases for which they can develop cures for. Sometimes I don't put that past them. These all the opinions expressed here are of me in particular right now because I'm the only one talking, but of the respective people, and don't necessarily represent the opinions of our company, Foolish IT.
Or general people, for that matter.
Yep. You got anything, Tank?
Happy Wednesday. That's about all I
That's a
got.
good sentiment. Good sentiment. Stay positive. I don't know if anybody else out there is in this position, but speaking of chronic conditions, I'm searching for trying to shop for a healthcare plan, and I have tons of options on the marketplace. All of one. Excuse me, one provider. I get a few plan options beneath that provider, but I thought that the marketplace was there for competition to occur between places, and that would ultimately drive down costs, and it's not proving to be that way at all. So I'm looking into potentially other insurance brokers, agents who we'll see. They're so backlogged because the renewal on healthcare.gov, and it does kind of force everyone to renew it around the same time, which I can understand isn't probably the best thing to do, or puts an unnecessary strain on some of the insurance companies. I'm hoping to be able to find something better than what I had previously, but by the looks of it, I'll be paying, if nothing changes, certainly I'll be paying more and getting less coverage this year than I did the year before, as was the case that year too. So my coverage reduced and my costs increased. So I'm hoping with that good happy Wednesday wish there, I'm hoping that maybe with this little bit of outreach that I'll get some other alternatives, other options for insurance. And I hope nobody else has to deal with that, but if you do and have any advice, please let me know. This is something I've been struggling with for the past 25 or so years, and I'm going to have to continue to struggle with it probably till I die. That being the case, I plan to spend many more years here walking the good earth, and I don't want to have to depend upon a 10 or 15% raise every year to compensate for my increased healthcare expenses. So let's hope for the best, or I certainly will in that regard. Proctor, you ask about Proctor, Quark. Proctor had some issues. He's under, I don't like to share personal information, but I think he's out on doctor visit or something like that. I don't.
He's old.
He's falling apart. Yeah.
He's just going to get some duct tape put on.
Yeah, we're taping him up. As soon as we can get, the microphone pumped into his throat there, we might be able to get some sounds to come out of his mouth. The simple solution is don't get sick. I appreciate that, Ian, but when you're born effectively with a chronic illness, it's not so much an option to just say don't get sick. And you can scream that to your kids all day and all night, and I'm pretty sure they're going to get sick too. if duct tape could fix every medical problem, yeah, I'd just dump everything all together. Although dumping insurance is not too much of an option these days. At least there's a tax penalty for that in our country. But I'm looking at viable options. You know, I want to see what can be done. I'm tired of resigning myself to nothing
Are
being
you going to
possible in
actually
that
talk
regard.
to someone, or are you just going to search around on the website? And
No, I've already made the phone calls, but like so many other things, we'll see whether or not I actually get a response back from it. Apparently, they're giving out the excuse on the other end of the line, even for the insurance brokers, that you may or may not ever get a call back because we're just too darn busy because of Obamacare. Um, so that doesn't give me much confidence. However, like I said, I'm doing something, so let's see what will come of that. And I ran across this earlier, and I definitely want to make all of you aware of it. Um, oh, Ian, no, don't worry about it. I'm fine. But people, you know, and it can be even minor things, but stuff that's totally maintainable, you know, I mean, like even something like AIDS is completely maintainable today. You, with the right treatment, you can live a long and productive and full life, despite that being a complete, that wouldn't have been true, you know, go back time to the late 70s or the 80s. Definitely wasn't the case back then, but that is the case today. And a lot of other things have gotten to that point as well, where they're, you know, really you can live a perfectly or mostly normal life. The problem is, to do that, you either need medications or medical devices to assist with the treatment, and that's where they get you. And the cost of those things increasing year over year is far in excess of inflation by any means, and that's where the problems come in. But I'll keep you posted on that if like I said, if any of you guys have, you know, suggestions that are real, you know, that it could be enacted by myself, I'll be happy to do it, and I'll go down the list, you know, as if they're real ideas, assuming they're not completely crazy and not illegal and not, you know, something that's impossible for me to do otherwise. I'm willing to try it because nothing else has worked up to this point. So let me know, and I'll keep you posted. Oh yeah, so what I wanted to warn you guys about, which got a little sidetracked from, is this one here. So you might want to tell your customers to beware if they ever were thinking about potentially taking their computers to Office Depot to get repaired. Apparently, there's some reports, or there are some reports alleging that they've basically told people their computer was infected with the malware virus or something like that, and it wasn't. And you know, there may have been improper charges involved in that. You know, I guess we'll have to see what happens with the case. Um, uh, but you know, certainly you want to. I know it was always important for our shop that we work for to educate our consumers, and you know, this might even help them come back into your door as opposed to going to one of those larger retail providers that seem to be everywhere these days. Um, but it's funny. Quark was mentioning that not illegal. Well, there goes most of our solutions to the healthcare thing. Yeah, no, I'm hoping there are legal means, you know, just options, little things, even like for instance, I mean, I could largely, a large number of people in this country can possibly, obviously, I'm not a doctor. You gotta talk to your doctor, but there are certain things that are cheaper than cholesterol medications and other things that could provide a similar benefit that they're just starting to to understand in greater detail. And now that the FDA is behind some of these things, like approving of fish oil to be used in certain cases of treatments relating to cholesterol and high lipids, or not lipids, um, um, I can't remember, triglycerides, that's it. You know, so there potentially is cost savings there, and so even little things like that can be useful. And also, like anybody can do certain things, like just eating healthier, losing weight. I know eating healthier can be more expensive in some cases, but if you do eat healthy to the point where your cholesterol or blood pressure or other problems may not be exacerbated, and you could take less medication to counter those things if you do have those problems. Um, those are all ways to potentially save money with healthcare, and they're certainly legal. Yeah, growing replacement organs in pigs. Well, it's not a thing because our immune system will still reject the organs, just like they'll reject organs from other humans we get them from without, usually without uh, medicinal assistance. Um, and oh, are you maybe talking about the growing a genetically human ear on a rat or something like that? It's possible, but nothing in my particular case I don't believe would. That's nothing that I've heard discussed, and anything along those lines is still years and years away, I believe. But I say that, and tomorrow they could come out with it. Um, hmm. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if anybody's ever played this before, but um, I have. It's a remarkably, impressively large game, and one of the few that actually allows you to not have specific servers that you connect to. In other words, everybody can see everybody else online at a given time, no matter where they are. Um, it's called Eve, and it's recently become free for everyone to play. Obviously, with some limitations in comparison to it previously, but it was an expansive, huge, impressive game when I first looked at it. It's take a little bit too much time for me these days, but if you do have it, um, Eve is a massively multiplayer online space simulation, and by space simulation I mean you build ships, you build stations, do resources economy, and God, there's so much. Yeah, Quark, I agree with you. It's largely a day job thing. It's so expansive that you could get lost for months in it. But I was able to play it on a limited basis for, an hour or two each day, and I still thought it was fun, at least for a little while. Um, but just wanted to mention that because I had played it before. I hadn't played it in years, so I'm sure it's even better than what I remember. Um, hmm, okay. See if I can come up with something else. Huh. Hmm. Okay, yeah, kind of. The Minecraft. Oh, speaking of Minecraft, that's interesting you mentioned that, Quark. So Microsoft, in the guise of promoting coding to the world, looks like they've is oh, mm, is that link right? Let me double check that link. Yeah, that link is okay. So it looks like under the guise of coding, they want you to create your own simple Minecraft game, but I'm sure this is just really promoting people to um, develop for Minecraft, which otherwise makes them a ton of money. But I guess kids learning to code for whatever reason, is generally a good thing. But funny you mention that. Funny you mention that quirk. Hi, HP Mike 43. We're pleased to have you join us. Please let us know if you have any questions or if there's anything we can do for you. We're always happy to help. Otherwise, I'm just trying to find some useful stuff to throw out to you guys. I'm sorry, today was a bit busy leading up to the show. Didn't get as much time to look into that. There's an interesting article on Ars Technica has a ton of in-depth articles sometimes, but they're very science oriented, or at least they have a sole science department, science editors and stuff like that that seem incredibly well trained. But this isn't necessarily that in depth in comparison to some of their other ones, but it's good news for the I'm sorry. No, so this article is, I thought this was about something else. This article is actually about um, people actually, the carbon impact of our agriculture and the planet in that regard. That's something I didn't actually consider so much, but apparently food production is responsible for more than a quarter of all greenhouse uh, emissions. And we've touched on this briefly, but the main thing is the livestock, the cows and all the methane, frankly, that they're producing, and methane's pretty bad as a greenhouse gas. But the CO2 output of that is considerable, and so potentially relying less upon meat and more upon vegetables could be beneficial. Take that as you will. I'm a big meat lover, and I'm probably not going to stop eating bacon ever. Let's see. Oh, let's see. I'm sorry, HP Mike. So, Mike, what specifically are you looking for regarding CryptoPrevent V8? What do you mean by testing? Is it what Phoenix was mentioning? Just let us know. I'll try to keep checking in. We're going to put some more YouTube videos regarding it up against some other threats out there in the near future. But as Phoenix mentioned, yeah, we've been a little bit busy with the rollout and some other things, some follow-ups to that. So just bear with us, but we'll get some more up there in the near future. I'm glad you enjoy them. So Phoenix, when somebody submits, we actually we get the file. So the idea is that if the new sample is encountered, we want to be able to potentially test it out and see if CryptoPrevent or our other CryptoPrevent and its protections can deal with it. And so we need in some cases live samples to make sure that that happens. Just having the hash is not the only way we protect against these types of things. I want to make that clear that we're not just doing hashes with CryptoPrevent. There's several technologies in play that we use to protect your PCs out there, and that's just one part of it. But thank you for all the questions, and please keep them coming if you have any more. In drone news of the day, chilling thought. We used to drive by, and I actually talked about this on our trip, is the speed enforced by aircraft. We're going into details on that and how that, or my argument was that was largely a joke these days, but it looks like this may be the cost-effective alternative for that type of thing, drones. So drones meet law enforcement. They're coming together more and more, and while that could be a good thing for law enforcement, it could also be a bad thing for people's privacy and constant surveillance. Yeah, Phoenix, Cerber is going crazy, and we appreciate you sending them. We'll be putting out, or we'll be incorporating some updates specifically for that very soon. So it turns out the newest version of Cerber relies upon a different sort of method to execute than previous versions, and we've come up with a couple of solutions for working with that, and we hope to have that out very soon for those the newest 4 plus variants, or the 4 point whatever variants of Cerber. In the meantime, one of the things that anybody out there can do to block against those types of attack is to do a custom blacklist and put PowerShell on it. That's one of the means by which it's using to circumvent our traditional protections. So you can do that in the interim, but we'll have something out as well. Here's an interesting article. So this is about hard drive reliability. I'm sure everyone in the tech sector is interested in this to some extent. So there is there's an article there. It looks like Seagate's 8 terabyte drives are actually doing pretty well as far as failure rates. Yeah, that's interesting. And there's even some Western Digital drives that are out there. But make sure these are specific models. So this doesn't necessarily represent an entire manufacturer's product line. But for high density storage, for network attached storage, for cloud storage, these are it's very important. The reliability is hugely important to your bottom line. And this talks about it in depth, and kind of surprising numbers there from a manufacturer that I didn't consider to be terribly reliable. But again,
like I've said before, I've seen lots of different cycles over the years with drive manufacturers where at one point one will be on the top, and then another point another one will be on the top, and the guy who was on the top one year might be on the bottom the next year.
Very true. And this basically says
very cyclical.
Cyclical, yeah. This basically proves that. But just be wary. Now you'll see like drive failures listed. Now, you have to consider, how many drives are in these groups, how many days they were in operation, and other factors, the reliability measurements. This is, again, Backblaze information. They seem to employ the largest number of drives, so I tend to think their data is an actual kind of snapshot of those things. But read into it what you will. But I don't know. I mean, if you're not looking at these kind of high capacity, some of these like aren't enterprise drives. They're going for cheaper. Some of these, can be far exceeded with more expensive drives. But when you're implementing potentially tens of thousands of drives or hundreds of thousands of drives or even millions of drives, you need cost as well as reliability, and that's where they're kind of focusing on. For different markets, though, your focus may be more on reliability than on cost. Depends on what you're doing and how much data is involved and lots of other factors. So, but more info is good, and there you go. Let's see, did I miss something in the chat?
HP Mike 43 was asking when Kill 'Em All was going to be updated.
I don't know if so Nick is working on the D7X technologies, including Kill 'Em All v5. Don't know if he's present right now, but I'm not sure what the progress is. But since D7X is coming along quite nicely, I managed similar improvements to Kill 'Em All v5, but he hasn't. He's been trying to focus, I think, a little bit more on the base D7X recently than the specific implementations like v5, because I think he wants to, get the D7X code out as soon as possible.
Are you having any issues with Kill 'Em All version 5, the current version, or do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, if it's an issue we can assist with, we'll certainly, and maybe possibly Nick's not aware of it, so if it's been reported to our ticket system, likely we are. If it hasn't been communicated otherwise, if this is the first contact you've had, yeah, let us know. Maybe there's something we can fix for you more quickly.
Nope, he says no problems, it's working 100%.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm sure, though, that it will receive an update as the D7X code continues to evolve, but that's good to know. It's very good to know. This is about as political I'll go today, but this guy got to be CEO. I'm surprised he would have said a statement like this, although, whether or not, I don't know what the size of the network security company is, but you got to be careful what you say. And I know I'm the last person to be able to say that to others. I might, me like every other human has problems sometimes with their tongues, but you shouldn't joke about killing someone, especially.
Did you have a link? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, especially after the person you're threatening to kill has been elected or is the president-elect of the country. And he seemed to know the
Yeah, that's just not
implications.
something you should joke about in public.
Yeah, I'm surprised he'd be
Probably not even in private.
And the CEO, yeah, to do this, that's horrible. Just me question that company, but
it's actually a crime. So
yeah, I mean it's on the books. I mean he's lucky he got off this well.
He could be prosecuted for just saying that.
Well, so he immediately came back with a retraction saying, "Oh, I was just joking, but I'm kind of sick and tired of that." Sure, everybody's just joking until somebody tells them what they did was illegal.
Yeah, everybody's joking until somebody gets an eye poked out.
Yeah, exactly. And there's enough animosity out there, and but if this pushes somebody to take some sort of action, too, you don't want to promote this type of thing. And it sickens me, as much as I may agree or disagree with the candidates and the decisions and everything else. There's, I'm more of a, you shouldn't kill type of guy. Make love, not war. So I wouldn't want to kill anybody, even people that I believe are bad for this country. That's what's so beautiful about our country. We can all have different opinions. We can agree to disagree. We can, it doesn't give us an excuse to harm people or to break our laws otherwise. Just because you didn't get our way, we don't need to throw potentially we don't need to throw tantrums. And sometimes I believe this is very much like children throwing tantrums. And We need to keep logic still in place in our government and in our society. A P environment have to be. Shook's got some interesting questions. Well, I guess it depends upon what medium the PE environment is on. Obviously, if it's on a non-writable medium, that's going to be an issue. P is not designed to potentially store data, but I think it has the ability to. So, and
No, it doesn't.
You
It doesn't
can't.
have the ability to store things.
You can't write to a
No.
storage device at all.
You can write to a storage device, but you have to have an additional storage device attached to write to it. Or you can write to the hard drive on the system itself. But PE, when it boots up clean, and it only does what it knows about when booting up. So.
But yeah, I mean, in the sense that
I'm going with there's no persistence.
there's no persistence. I mean,
Yeah, like Linux live USB or live images.
I know, but you could easily
so that you can have something
you could
continuously
run a
there.
script to copy right? I mean, you could copy your user profile or whatever in a web browser or something potentially to a storage device that's not the bootable one. I mean, there might be ways to accomplish it. At the gate, though, I would agree with you that by default there's not going to be persistence.
If you've ever tried to set up a PE environment, you'll know that doing something like that is almost impossible.
Well, the last time I tried to set up PE environments personally, I was dealing with write-protected media, so I wasn't so sure that that was a limitation of that versus the actual environment in of itself.
Everything gets loaded into RAM on PE, so you would not only have to back it up when you shut down or closed out, but also when you loaded everything up again.
As long as it's on flash storage, you should be able to rewrite that media and then on a reboot have a new persistence of sorts. But anyway. Let me see that link that Phoenix posted. I'm not sure exactly how this relates to what we were talking about, but okie dokie. Okay, so HP Mike 43 says, last thing, I'm on Windows 10 using Encrypt Premium plus maintenance. Can I upgrade or is it the best for home user? So you'll want to, right now, if you want to upgrade to version 8, what you'll need to ideally, well, for clean installation, I'd recommend just uninstalling your CryptoPrevent Premium, downloading the free download from our site, and then upon installation, if it detects your previous key, it'll enable the premium features, or you can enter that in during installation, and that'll get you the that'll get it for you. So you don't have to wait to try out the new features if you'd like. Hopefully we'll be deploying the actual upgrade so you can upgrade within the application at some point in the very near future.
The link I just posted, the System Rescue Toolkit, just updated and has a automatically fix everything offline option. You might want to check that out if you're still building your boot CD.
Oh, you mean as additional tool to include?
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
Just go through and clean up and fix hard drives offline, or fix systems offline.
Oh, neat. Thank you for sharing.
Try it out and let us know if it actually works.
Okay, so I'm kind of running out of things. I appreciate you throwing that out. Here's another 960 Evo 1 terabyte review if you guys want to take a look at some other numbers there for that. But I've read now a number of those reviews, and they all seem to be pretty consistent across the board. Just make sure that when you're looking at the performance, it's good for consistent long-term performance. You want to see what happens after the turbo write cache gets depleted. There's a certain dynamic cache that's basically written as SLC to the drive, and then after that it dumps over. And so the baseline performance, whereas you may be getting, like, for instance, 1.9 gigabytes a second in write transfers to the drive. After the cache fills, you may only get about 1,200, 1.2 gigabytes a second. Again, for the price and the size and everything else, I think those are all big factors. But just be wary when you're looking at benchmarks. If it's a short-term benchmark, you may see different numbers, and longer-term activity may expose some differences. It's generally just about as fast as the 960 Pro, but the 960 Pro does hold some large advantages in certain very specific areas, and one of them being that it doesn't have that issue. In other words, its write performance would be consistent across the entire drive. Another thing to point out is that there could be some throttling issues if you don't have a well-cooled system with the drives. They're not going to cause any problems. The drives will maintain a thermal threshold. I forget I'm not sure what it is for those specific devices, but if it were to exceed that threshold, they basically throttle the device, the controller's performance until it gets within that threshold, meaning that performance can be impacted by the operating temperature in the case of these NVMe SSDs, and you want to definitely make sure that they're cool enough. I would probably recommend that Samsung had put some sort of heat spreader or something like that on it as a more permanent solution, but I guess there's nothing really stopping you from adding that aftermarket. Now, those things are
Michael,
so...
which chat did you mean to put the link in?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Definitely not the one he did it on.
Yeah, so that's the that's the
You may resume your rant now.
yeah, so just be aware of that. You may want to put some, like, we bought Raspberry Pis, and they don't necessarily come with heat sinks, but people want to overclock them and otherwise run them out of spec, or just want to maintain an ultimately cooler environment for them. We'll add some heat sinks to it, and that may be ultimately recommended depending upon your case. But
Was he asking for your rambling link or a link to the upgrading from D7 to D8?
he asked for
There's that if you would like that instead. It's Michael just
thought
assumed.
Shuk was providing a link to. I thought that related to what Shuk was talking about, but my apologies.
Oh well. Either way, you got lots of links now. So we are at that time now, and Michael, I have another version for you to test, so let's get to that. And we'll leave with one last link here that you can restart Chrome from within Chrome by visiting a web page. I thought that was pretty cool. So, all right, wrap it up.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Weird. So thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Tomorrow, and again at 6 on Friday. FoolishTechShow.com, and thanks for joining us, everyone in the RC chat. We love the participation. Future Crew, Shuk, Phoenix, Mike, I think we just lost you. Noam. But anyway, thanks, and we'll see you again tomorrow, hopefully. Laters, internets.